Hello and welcome from my little space here in Vienna. My name is Louise, I'm a literature student, and behind me you can see my bookshelf, and I'm going to organize it a little bit in this video and also going to do the time and place book tag, I think? Time and place book tag, because I was tagged by Catherine Bailey. Thank you for that. And yeah, let's start with organizing my bookshelf. I'm not going to do like a crazy organization or like anything wild. I don't have that much time, and I hope to get a new bookshelf soonish. I don't know, I don't really have the finances at the moment, but I would love to have a bookshelf that is a little bit more to my aesthetic. This is just a normal IKEA bookshelf, and I would like to have some second-hand, vintagey, antique looking bookshelf, but I haven't found one yet that is in my price range and also that fits in, because there's not a lot of space.
I have a lot of different visions for my bookshelf, but this is one of them. I really like that you can close it, but it is aesthetically very pleasing. And I would love one like that, but it is insanely expensive. I don't have that kind of money. It would be secondhand, but I can't afford it. So I'll have to keep looking.
And I would have a lot more books if I had the space and if my life didn't involve moving a lot, because in the past few years I've moved quite often, and everyone was always complaining about literature students with all their books. So obviously I don't have that many books, but still a nice collection, I would say, and I would just like to get a little bit of organization in there. Nothing wild. So let's get started. Okay, so my bookshelf does not have a very particular organization. It just doesn't work because the space is too limited. So on the top shelf, I don't know how much you can actually see, but on the top shelf there are just books that I haven't read, because I got a big sack of books from a relative that passed away, and that was just a lot of books at once that I never came around to read until now. So yeah, lots of books that I haven't read in the top shelf. The shelf underneath is a mixture of just like fiction, but also going into the direction of historical fiction and non-fiction. I have a lot of books about like Marie Antoinette, because I wrote an essay about her and I'm just really interested in her. I've got letters between Maria Theresia and her daughter Marie Antoinette in German. I've also got them in French. Then I've got some diaries and letters from Axel von Fersen, who was... It's said that they, like Marie Antoinette and Axel von Fersen, had a relationship, or like they were in love, but it's a difficult matter, and obviously films and books like to use this and make a romantic story out of it, but it's not 100% proven. I mean, I could go into depth about this. There is also something really interesting, because some parts of the letters were crossed out, so you couldn't read them anymore, and obviously that was for protection of the Queen and that guy, Axel von Fersen. And they recently managed to make it readable again, and you do see that there was some kind of love and affection, but it doesn't mean that they had an actual thing going on, or I don't know. I'm not too much into the whole thing. I'm no historian, so please don't mark my word for it, but I'm really interested in it. So there is a little bit of historical, mostly non-fiction in the second shelf from the top, and also some normal fiction. Underneath we have a little bit of poetry, a little bit of fiction, and a little bit of English literature, so anything I had to read for my studies. I did study English and American studies for a couple of semesters, but I didn't proceed. It just wasn't exactly my thing. But I still have some classics like Shakespeare and all that stuff in English. Yeah. And then there are two big shelves with fantasy. Obviously, Harry Potter collection, and I do have Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones. You can't see that from this angle, but it's underneath this shelf, Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones. And then there is another one in the bottom with books from my childhood and travel literature, so anything related to traveling. A very sad thing is that I actually don't have any books from my childhood anymore, like only a very few, and also from my teenager years, because I stored them in the basement of my parents' house, or the house I grew up in, and there was a big flood and everything was damaged that was down there in the basement. And yeah, the books didn't make it, unfortunately. It is quite sad, but most important thing is that no one got hurt, because if someone would have been down there, I think there wouldn't have been any chance. But that's getting quite dark now. But I mean, I'm sad about my books, but I think whenever I go into a bookstore now and I see one of the books that I used to love when I was a kid, it's even more special, and I'm excited to see it in a bookstore. But I don't have them, like I didn't bring them to Vienna when I moved because I thought it's just too much. And yeah, they're no longer here, unfortunately. Got a few books in Norwegian. It's like only 3 books that are in Norwegian, but this one is just so lovely. It's really beautifully illustrated, and I really like it. And it's a children's book, so I do understand what it says, because I'm studying Scandinavian studies and I had the focus on Norwegian, so I had a Norwegian course at university, and reading books in the original language is just so vital to get into the language, but I'm just not doing it enough, unfortunately. But with this children's book, it was just so nice to read it because I actually could understand it, and then you had those beautiful illustrations. So for the first book in the time and place book tag, I'm choosing Harry Potter. I know for some this might seem very basic, but maybe there will be a generation that is not interested in Harry Potter, or they don't read it. I know there's also a very big controversy about J.K. Rowling, and this is not supportable at all, but it's still a book that reminds me of my past, and it is a very, very big part of my childhood. I remember I always wanted to go to London to see the Warner Bros. Studios with my parents, and my dad was always like, well, he just wasn't in the mood to go there, and then he kept saying, let's just wait a couple of years until you're not into the whole Harry Potter fandom anymore, and then we can go to London, because then you won't want to see the Warner Bros. Studios, but it never happened. And then when I was old enough, I just went on my own, and I would go there all the time if I could. So yeah, it's Harry Potter. It's just something that makes me very emotional and nostalgic, because it's a wonderful world. Do I have to say more? Okay, next is a book about a place that I would like to visit but haven't visited, and this is by an Austrian author. His name is Hans Platzgumer, and I'm not sure if there is an English translation. I need to check this, but it's in German. But it is set in Japan, and I found this was a very amazing book. This is actually just the cover, because the book is at my parents' place, but it was so interesting. It was set in Japan and covering a very intense story. It was historical fiction. It starts in 1912 in Tokyo, and I think it goes on until 1923. It also covers the Kanto earthquake and lots of other very intense stories. I find it quite interesting when people from other nations write about a certain place they're actually not from. I can't judge it how well he did it, but yeah, about the place, I would love to go to Japan once. I'm terrified of flying, so airplanes not my favorite thing to be in. So if it wasn't that far and if it wouldn't cost that much, I would go immediately. So maybe one day when I've faced my fear of flying. But yeah, Japan would be very interesting. Okay, a book that is set in the city that I live in. This one is set in Vienna, as the title says. It is by a well-known an Austrian author called Eva Menasse, and I haven't read the book, so this is on my TBR, and I hope that I can read it soon, but it's not anywhere on top of the list, so I don't know yet. But it's a very great author from Austria, so yeah. There are obviously a lot of Austrian authors that I read, because I'm also doing a master in Austrian studies, focusing on language, history and literature from Austria, and therefore you will hear me talk about Austrian authors or German-speaking authors quite a lot, obviously. But yeah, I also have a book by John Irving that is set in Vienna, but I haven't come very far. I started reading it and I don't know if I liked it. I kind of stopped. It wasn't like, I wasn't like too into it, but John Irving is quite an interesting writer, so maybe I need to try a different book by him first. I don't know if this was a good start to get into his work. This is a book that is set in a place that I really admire. I find so the book is called When the Night Comes by Favel Parrett, and I have read this book. I think I've already read it twice, because back in the days when I read it, I was quite young. I mean, I'm still quite young, but it was like, I don't know, 10 years ago. Is the book even that old? It's from 2014, and it is set in Antarctica, or some parts of the book are set in Antarctica, and I find this place just so fascinating, how harsh it is, and there's still life. And for me, I watched Dune a couple weeks ago, and that is also a very extreme environment in the desert, but I was just stressed watching it during the whole movie, because just the thought of heat makes me so uncomfortable, and also everywhere the sand, and it was really tough for me to watch because of that, because heat is just so so difficult for me. And this is a book that is really, really touching and beautiful. It has a lot of things going on in between the lines. There are a lot of things that aren't said directly, and I highly recommend it. It's fantastic, really beautiful writing. But like I said, it's been a while since I read it. But back then I really, really loved it. There is also a suggested playlist in the back with Pink Floyd, The Beatles, and Fleetwood Mac, Neil Young, so that is a very nice thing as well. A book that is set in the future where I think it is or will be realistic. And I find that difficult. I don't have a lot of science fiction at home, and I don't know, but maybe, and to be honest, I haven't read this book, but it would kind of, you know, refer to COVID and the whole pandemic by Albert Camus, The Plague. So I should have read this when I was doing my exchange semester in St. Andrews. It was part of the class I took there. I never read it, even though I was really interested, but I was just completely overwhelmed with the reading list there, so I did not read it. But now that I think of it, I actually should read it. It's like completely out of my mind. One very big and important question that I have for you. Let me know in the comments. Are you someone who breaks the binding of a book, like when you have a paperback book? Do you break the back of the book or not? And are you more of a reader who likes the book to really look as if someone has taken it everywhere, well read, or someone who likes the book to look super new? I just, maybe you can guess what kind of person I am. Also, a very important thing that I own is this book cover that it's leather, and I've had this for ages, and you can just wrap your book in it, and then it's safe while traveling. So I found this at Manufactum, but I think they don't sell it anymore, and I'm just so happy that I have this. I use it quite often whenever I travel. I mean, it does make the book a little bit more heavy, but that's okay. So a little book cover. Where am I gonna put it? Up here. Okay, to be honest, not much has changed in my bookshelf, but I did just organize it the way that feels nice for me at the moment.
My One Tree Hill collection that I bought secondhand because you can't stream it anywhere. And yeah, One Tree Hill, super important. And then you have Game of Thrones and some Harry Potter books. They're also my 2 wands, very important. My Harry Potter collection up here, Lord of the Rings, some other fantasy novels, and some Christmas related books for anyone who knows Downton Abbey. This is from the real castle, Highclere Castle. I would love to visit that, and it's also a place that I admire, definitely. In this shelf you have lots of classics. Over there's some poetry, Patti Smith, William Blake, and lots of classics, like I said, all the yellow ones, and these are in English. There is science fiction in the middle of this whole section because this is just anything English, and I mean it's a bit of a mess because there are other English books in the rest of the shelf, but this one is here because I had to read it for one of my classes when I was doing my exchange semester, so it kind of sits with the other books that I had to read for university in English. So yeah. So that's that, and there is my very small Norwegian collection. It's just 3 books that is originally in Norwegian. I do have other books that are from Norwegian authors, but they are translated. Alright, up here we have fiction, so this is fiction, and over here we have some historical non-fiction, so like I said, all about Marie Antoinette biography and her letters. This is about Sissi, for anyone who knows her. She is the Austrian empress, very famous. And this one is just so cool. It's about 18th century hairstyles. And I would love to get the other book by American Duchess on clothes and how to sew them, but I can't sew, so I would have to start, but it would be a pretty cool project. Alright, let's move on. Up here are just all the books that I haven't read yet, and this is all this is all fiction, and yeah, one day I might get to it, we'll see. And on top there are just some DVDs, but nothing too interesting. So yeah, that's my bookshelf.
And I will do a proper, organization once I have a new bookshelf, but it will probably take a few more months until that happens. And I also think that with secondhand furniture, it is a process, it takes a lot of time, and you need to be patient with that. But I'm happy with my books, and it is time to finish my tea and do some reading maybe. I still have to decide if I'm going to read a book for university or some private book. And I hope you have a lovely day, and I'll see you next time. Bye!